Hi, Glenys.
Hey, Aaron. What do you want to talk about today?
How much I hate diets.
Yeah, diets suck.
So what do you do instead of a diet?
Intuitive eating. Health at every size.
So how many times have you had to explain intuitive eating and health at every size to someone?
Like 5,000 times. But that was just to my doctor.
Okay, so how many times have you explained it to someone and then they said, but diets are the only thing I know?
That's like every time. Can we pursue health without thinking about weight?
Yes, we can pursue health without thinking about weight.
That's pretty revolutionary, what you just said. But what if you just don't like yourself at the size that you're at?
I think we need to understand why, instead of just saying I need to change.
So, what's the deal with body positivity?
Oh man, that's a long answer. I'm Aaron Flores.
And I'm Glenys Oyston. And we are Dietitians Unplugged. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another podcast episode of Dietitians Unplugged. Aaron, how's it going?
Beautifully. Loving the show.
Great.
Another episode.
We have a really good show that I'm excited about. We have Alissa Sobo on today, and she is the creator of Ample. And we're going to get into everything about what Ample is, but the basic short form is kind of like Yelp for marginalized people, and which includes larger bodies. So I'm super excited to talk to her about that today. But let's see what's going on with you. What's new in your world?
Listen, things are going really well. Private practice continues to grow. So there's slots for people to work with me if you're interested. And I'll be doing a lot of speaking in between February and April. So if you're in the Pacific Northwest, Texas, New York, or Boston, be on the lookout. I'm coming your way soon.
Right. And, in our next episode, you can talk a little bit more about where all those places are so people can start planning their schedule.
Yeah. And I'm going to make tour shirts and, there'll be merch. I'll be selling my merch after each speaking session. No, just kidding. I'm not doing that.
No merch. Wah, wah. Too bad. I think merch with that awesome logo of yours, Smash the Watriarchy, would be awesome.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, you're going to be really busy the next 6 months by the sounds of it. So
for sure. Yeah. How about you?
Yeah. So just getting ready for our Health at Every Size for Diabetes Care groups that I run with Rebecca Scritchfield. You can sign up to get on our list right now. The link is going to be in the show notes, or if you don't want to bother going over to our show notes on the Libsyn page, you can just email me at Glenys, GLENYS @daretonotdiet.com, and just let me know that you want to get on the list to find out, when we're launching. We're gonna open registration in February, and have people sign up, and we're gonna have the groups through March, and we'll have those dates out for you soon. But yeah, if you want to make sure that you get on the list to find out so you don't miss the Facebook posts when they go out, just email me. And really excited about helping people with diabetes learn how to care for themselves from a body kindness perspective, a non-restrictive, non-diety kind of perspective. And we had really good reactions from people in our groups. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, such an amazing resource.
Thank you.
Yeah. Let's read Alissa's bio. Do you want to go ahead and do that?
Yeah. So Alissa Sobo, she's coming on the show today. Alissa is a software engineer and a co-founder of Ample, a review website like Yelp for rating doctors, services, and establishments on their accessibility and inclusiveness toward marginalized bodies, which includes fat, trans, disabled, and BIPOC, which means Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Ample has amassed over 700 reviews and recommendations across 10 countries since its beta launch in 2018. Alissa began the open source volunteer-led project in 2017 after experiencing fat shaming at the doctor during her pregnancies. While there were some nascent resources for finding fat-friendly services at the time, she started Ample with the hope of improving these tools with up-to-date technologies, centralizing the information into one easy to find repository, and honoring the intersectional identities of communities. When she's not coding, she can be found riding bikes and gardening with her family in Portland, Oregon. So we're so excited to have her on today.
And I think this is a resource that is we're really excited to promote. And again, we're not getting paid to promote this. This is something we just wanted to spread the word to our listeners. But I think it's such a great resource, and it takes that critical mass to really get something like this useful in so many different communities. So hopefully people after listening will go online, check out Ample and start using it, because it's really an amazing resource.
Yes, and I've already sort of recommended it to some of my clients who are in need of doctors. So this is so needed, and I'm so excited that it exists, and want to do whatever we can to help grow it.
Absolutely.
So here's our interview with Alissa Sobo. Hey, Alissa.
Hey, Alissa.
Hey, guys. How are you guys doing?
Good. Thank you so much for being on the show. We are super excited to talk about Ample, which, Aaron, you heard about last year when you were at the ASDA conference, and then you told me about it, and I think I heard some stuff about it too. So we are super excited to have you here and talking about it. So for the people out there that have not heard about what Ample is, can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah. So Ample is a rating and review app. It's like Yelp, but it's for people who live in marginalized bodies. So right now we focus on people who live in large bodies, people with disabilities, trans people, or people who identify as LGBTQIA, and people of color. And the goal is to rate businesses, doctors, and services on how inclusive and accessible they are to people in marginalized bodies. So you use the app much like you use Yelp. You go on, you search for businesses in your area, whatever you're looking for, and you look at their profile, and you can see if people have reviewed them, what that review and rating is, and you can make your own ratings and reviews, among other things that you can do on the app.
Oh, that's kind of... Go ahead, Aaron.
No, I was going to say it's kind of awesome. I
mean,
it's
just what I was
like,
going to say too. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, we think so.
Well, listen, like one of the questions I get all the time, I think Glenys, you do too, like here in LA, is who's the doctor I should send this client to? Like who's the HAES doctor in LA?
Yes.
And I think I would love it if, at one point in the very near future, someone could go on the website, isitample.com, and just find out, right? Oh, who are the doctors near me that have been well reviewed? And even doctors that might, not be so well reviewed, right? It's going to be really helpful. So one of the things I love about getting to talk to people like you is the origin story. And I am guessing that there's a really interesting origin story about how this website came to be. Do you mind sharing that with us?
Yeah, I'd love to. I always say our origin story goes back to this one horrifying trip to the doctor I had. I was in my second pregnancy, and I went to the doctor, and it was kind of a setting where there were many doctors in a group, and it could be anyone that delivered the child. So you had to kind of see all the doctors beforehand for your prenatal treatment. And so I remember going into the doctor, and the first thing she said was, "Hi, hello." She looked down at my chart, and she looked up, and she said, "You've gained a lot of weight in this first trimester." And I was kind of immediately caught off guard. And I probably stumbled, "Well, yeah, something to that effect." And she really set in on me. She said, "Oh, well, you must be eating the scraps off of your 1-year-old's plate."
Oy vey.
And she said, she was, "Oh, you must not exercise because you have a 1-year-old too." So she just literally, and in that way, really set in on an attack of me. And I had never had that experience with the doctor before. Of course, I had talked about my weight in the past, but I had never kind of been attacked in such a way. And it was a truly traumatic experience for me. But so I went home, and of course I was distraught, and I thought, I gotta find a different doctor. I need something else. I need someone who's not gonna shame me for my weight or whatever weight gain I might have, which is normal in pregnancy. And I went online and I started looking around, and there was a kind of a few pieced together resources, but there really wasn't any one central trove. And so I thought, like, I can fix this. I'm a software engineer. I am taking care of a 1-year-old, and I'm pregnant again because I had my kids really close together. And I think that maybe this would be a really cool way to use my time at home before I go back to work to build something that it could centralize all the data into one place. And at the time, I lived in a really rural place in California. So it would have been hard to find someone anyways. But that's kind of how I think of how the idea got implanted in my mind.
And how long have you been doing like software engineering before that?
I'd only been an engineer for a couple years before that. I have a really unusual career history. I got a degree in chemistry, and I thought I wanted to be a chemist. And of course, when you get a degree in chemistry, you take like a semester of programming. At that time, it was this really, it's a language that no one ever really uses much anymore, or scientists use it a little bit still, called Fortran.
I was going to say, is it Fortran?
Yeah. Yeah, people still do use Fortran. I shouldn't say that, but it's not, people don't build like modern day stuff with it really too much. But yeah, so after that I opened a restaurant, which I owned for a number of years and sold, and then I taught cooking and gardening in schools and science, and then when I got pregnant, I was like, okay, I need to not stay home with my children. That's a personal preference.
Yeah.
That's the hardest job in the world in my book, and people who do that job are saints. But I kind of knew it wasn't for me at that time. So my husband is a software engineer. My brother's a software engineer. So I thought, well, I think I should learn to code. And I feel like I have a real entrepreneurial spirit. So for me, it was really appealing because you can build things even easier if you're just building them virtually.
Yeah.
As compared to, like, say, building a restaurant and running a restaurant. That's far more moving pieces and far more complicated than just being able to build cool apps and cool things online.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
I love how the course got us here. And you're right. I mean, it seems like software engineering is like almost like the modern creativity outlet for a lot of folks.
It really is. I think maybe some people don't view it as a creative sport, but it absolutely is creative. It's the best of all worlds, right?
Yeah.
It's creative and technical and totally doable for any listeners who are interested in learning. They shouldn't hesitate because there's lots of resources out there.
That's awesome.
Cool.
What you had mentioned, what was in your bio is that this kind of information was sort of all around in different pieces in the world. Like, here are doctors that are good for, larger bodies, or who are kinder to people with larger bodies. Like, I remember there was a list I've posted called, it's like really old. It was called Cat and Dragon or something like that.
Oh, that's Fat Friendly Docs.
Yeah. But
but it also has this other name. Cat and Dragon.
And it's not really up to date because I send it to clients and they're like, this doctor isn't here anymore. And I was like, oh,
it's dead.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, damn it. So this is so needed, like this repository of all that information that is floating around out there. Were you able to draw from those?
Absolutely. Fat Friendly Docs is such a great and amazing project that started, and it was an early project, and I have so much respect for Fat Friendly Docs and the people behind that. But I think that we needed a new way to interface with this information. So the review format is perfect for this, right? Because if you go in 2018 and see that doctor and someone comes back and they see that doctor and maybe their philosophy has changed for the good or the worse, we can then easily update that information with the review. So there's kind of a built-in easy way for people to interface with the information and to keep it up to date kind of in a natural way.
How exactly does Ample work? Like, you have businesses that get amplified. So what does that mean? And also, how do businesses get amplified?
Yeah, so there's a few different ways to use Ample. So the first way is just a straightforward way where you go on, you say, I want a doctor in the Los Angeles area or the Portland area, and we bring up a list of what we have for that area. So the first ones you'll see are any of the ones that have been rated or reviewed on Ample. And you'll see them all listed out with their pictures, and you can go to their profile. You can read the reviews made about them. You can see how the score breaks down. If there's been, a few reviews on that, we kind of break down the score and say, overall, this is their score. But in these certain areas, like in trans inclusivity, they don't have quite as high of a score as in this other area, and so on. And you can even leave a review yourself. So it's very much like Yelp in that sense. But we also have a few other ways that you can use Ample. If you own a business, you can go on and claim your business. And when you claim your business, you're prompted to take a pledge of inclusivity. If you choose to take that and choose to agree to the wording of this pledge, what you're saying is, I pledge to be inclusive to all marginalized bodies, and to the best of my knowledge, make my spaces physically accessible. And I pledge to continue listening to those groups and receiving feedback if there's something I'm not doing correctly. And so if you choose to take that pledge, then what we do is display a little badge on your profile page that's really cute, a cute little badge. And it says that you've taken the pledge. It also allows you to make a business statement, and we put that right across the front of your business profile. And so in this business statement, people use it to talk about their overall philosophy. People use it to say, I'm a health at every size, dietitian, and this is my philosophy about treatment. People use it to say, I have some stairs. I have 2 stairs in the front, but I'm working on getting a ramp or the necessary things to make the space more accessible. People use it in all kinds of different ways. It's just a little place where businesses can kind of speak directly to their potential customers on their business page. And then you also appear on our map, and in search results, you rise higher. And so that's a great way for businesses who want to cater to the community or want to make sure they're catering to the community to participate. And so any business can do that. You can go on and we walk you through how to claim your business. It's pretty straightforward, I think, and we have a blog post written about it, answering more questions. And we've had a number of businesses, maybe about 100 businesses so far, do that. And then the third way that you talked about, you mentioned amplifiers. So that is a thing that we developed kind of as a response to the fact that online, a lot of us see recommendations all the time of places in our community. I know that I participate in local health at every size Facebook groups and stuff like that. And those groups are kind of primarily for recommending resources to each other. And so I see that happening all the time. And I would go on and I would, when I felt brave enough, I would pop in and say, hey, put that on Ample. But sometimes people, for whatever reason, can't do that. They don't have the time or the resources to right then go and put that review on Ample. So what I wanted to be able to do was to go in and say, this is an idea. This is a hot lead, as we call it. We've amplified this. This is a trusted person has come in and said, hey, this might work for you. We make sure to make it really clear that this place doesn't have firsthand reviews. It hasn't been reviewed, but it's been amplified. So it's maybe not as great as a firsthand review from somebody, but it's kind of the next best thing if you're looking for resources. And then we put it out there to the community. Hey, are you interested in being an amplifier? Just, basically email us. We have a conversation to make sure that you understand the responsibilities of being an amplifier, just a little email exchange. And then you get these privileges turned on for you so that whenever you're logged in and you're looking at any page on Ample, you're just looking at a business page. In addition to the review button, you'll also see like a special little blue button that says amplify. And just with 1 or 2 clicks, you're able to say, hey, this is a great lead. I've heard from talking with my friends or online that this is a great lead. And so that's been able to help us kind of grow the database a little bit more because we're able to have a special little dedicated super user group who's kind of always on the lookout for things that they see in their area.
That's so cool. I mean, it's like so many different ways to sort of get that community out there. And what I love looking at is if you go on the website, you know, looking at the map and seeing just sort of like these visuals of all these different areas that have either reviews or amplifications or whatever. It's really interesting. And so so one thing that I see is like Pacific Northwest is strong. You all are, I mean, you're from there. And that community is very strong there anyway. What other communities do you see across, let's just stick with the United States for right now. Sorry, everyone else. I'm going to do my bias there, but where else in the United States do you see this sort of having at least some growth?
Yeah. So another area that is pretty decently strong is the Los Angeles area. I feel like it's not too shabby. What we did was we went in and we tried to look at that fat-friendly docs list, which is a long list. And we had some volunteers who kind of tried to hunt down the doctors on that list and see if they were still in practice, see if they were still a good lead. And so we amplified some of those. And I feel like we did that in the Los Angeles area. So you might be seeing that. I can't remember because that fat-friendly docs list is worldwide. And as is Ample. So we had to kind of pick and choose. I did a bunch in Germany one day. I was like, I want to go in and populate Germany a little bit with amplifications. And so I feel like Los Angeles is decently strong. The Bay Area is decently strong. Las Vegas is actually pretty strong because of a funny thing. The group No Lose, which is one of the few and main big organizations that are dedicated to furthering fat acceptance. They did a little project a long time ago where they had their Las Vegas members fill out like a paper form of a review. It was just this. So, right, that highlights that this idea of a fat Yelp or Yelp for marginalized bodies isn't new. I think it's been floating around for a long time. But so they did a little version of this on paper in the Las Vegas area. And so they had this like stack of like, I think 70 to 80 paper reviews. And one of our volunteers went into Ample and they had a special little like profile that they did this with. And they put in all of those reviews into Ample in the Las Vegas area. So that's really awesome. It's funny that Las Vegas has this little blip of tons and tons of restaurants and casinos and all kinds of funny things that are reviewed.
Well, I guess it's a reason to go to Vegas.
Yeah, exactly. And Vegas already is a really accessible place.
Yeah.
Like that's one thing. Reagan Chastain is a friend of Ample and is kind of a team member on Ample. And she has always told me that she considers Las Vegas a really accessible place. So it makes sense.
Yeah, no, totally. You've done a really good job of explaining a little bit about how your site is inclusive and how you're trying to really address inclusivity from all these different intersections, gender identity, BIPOC, race and things. You know, it's interesting because like those things you can show up to one place with one of those things, all of them, right? I mean, that's what intersections are. So how do you like sort of communicate that to users, right? That this place might not be a good place that's as accepting for someone in a larger body, but is, really accessible and inclusive of the transgender community.
Yeah, totally. So when you make a review, you are given not just one 5-star rating, you're given 4 5-star ratings. And so we ask a user to give a star rating for each category: trans inclusivity, inclusivity towards people of color, disability inclusivity, and large body inclusivity or fat inclusivity if you choose to identify with that word. So you're actually making 4-star reviews and then writing an actual narrative of the review.
Okay.
So then we kind of compute an overall score from the 4 ratings that someone gave. And you're always welcome to not make a rating in a certain category. There's a lot of discussion that we have within Ample and Ample adjacent people about whether or not we really want people to be rating categories that they may not embody or understand. For instance, people who are white aren't going to sometimes really understand if it's inclusive to people of color, because that's what white privilege is, right? We cannot see it sometimes. So where we kind of left it is we allow people to do it, but in Ample 2.0 or Ample 1.0, really, because we kind of consider what we put out there as kind of a public beta launch. In the next iteration of Ample, there's a lot of discussion about whether or not we want to make some changes to that and really kind of ask people to self-identify what they are and then kind of take that information from that point of view and allow people to kind of only see information that was maybe reviews made by other people of color, other trans people. They might feel that that's a more valuable piece of feedback if it comes from someone who has a similar identity, which I totally understand why they would feel that way. So that's some of the ideas that are floating out there about how to make the review process a little stronger.
Yeah, it sounds to me it's one of those things that takes a lot of thought.
Yes,
and it's not there's no sort of simple like, oh, this is just the answer, right? It takes a lot of thought. And so, who else? You mentioned Reagan's on your team. Who else like helps advise you and do you have some of these conversations with?
Yeah, early on. Though one of the people that we had a lot of discussions with and who we still, of course, have discussions with is Virgie Tovar. Maybe some of your listeners know Virgie Tovar from all of the amazing things that she does. But we did rely on her to kind of bounce these questions off of, because these questions are really weighty and you're right. They do take a lot of thought and a lot of consideration. And so we wanted to kind of run it past as many people who maybe had already done some of this kind of thought previously. And then we made our best stab at what we thought was a good thing to do coming out of the gate, and figured while this is out in the wild, we'll be collecting really useful information about how people want to interact and what people want this kind of a tool to look like.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Great. Thank you.
So what are you sort of hoping, or how do you see Ample sort of growing and progressing? Like, basically, how can our listeners and us, how can we help grow this online resource?
Yeah, I think that the main thing I'd love to see people do is go on and make some reviews when they think of it. That's totally awesome. And I hope that this thing just continues like a rock, rolling rock, continues to gather lots of moss, continues to gather lots of reviews. And certainly if anyone owns a business, this is kind of a lot of people who have like body coaching businesses, dietitians, people who work in like fitness. We have a lot of people claiming their businesses. So certainly if any listeners want to claim their business, they should absolutely go on and go through that quick little process of claiming the business. And that's a great way for people to interact. If someone is interested in being an amplifier in their area, then that's awesome. If you want to keep a lookout for businesses and amplify things in your area when you hear other people talk about them to grow your own little geographic area, that's a great way to participate. And yeah, using it.
Yeah.
Go on and use it, people.
Yeah. Yeah. Tell people about it. Use it. We're all volunteer shop right now. We're open source, which means that the entire code base is open for anyone to look at, like the entire code base. And we run on volunteer Steam. So if there's anything else you want to do that you can think of, any other ways that you can think of to help, we're always open to that anytime. It's usually always a yes when people say, is there anything I can do, or can I help out in a certain way? And we've got lots of ideas coming up for Ample 1.0. So just stay tuned. And if you go to Ample and you experience a bug of some kind, just we ask for a little bit of patience and kindness in that too.
It's a work in progress.
Yeah, it's a work in progress. And, I don't think any piece of software is ever done, but we're definitely far from it. We've got a lot of things we want to do with it. And we've got some projects that are kind of adjacent to it that we want to work on. So yeah, there'll be more coming out from us. I think just keep an eye out.
That's so exciting.
So I'm going to be a little bit nudgy, right? But when do you think some of those things are going to hit our hit our eyes?
Yeah, so I've got one thing I'm starting up. For me, the healthcare portion of this all is really important. Obviously, from my origin story, it was how I initially thought of the idea and how I initially framed it to myself, because I think it's really life or death for people. I mean, I'm sure all of your listeners have had experiences, either themselves or people that they know, of how going into the doctor when you're not the traditional body is terrifying and demoralizing. And sometimes things actually get missed. Cancers get missed. All kinds of things get missed for a really long time. It's really tragic, and it's kind of an emergency in my mind. So one idea that we wanted to do was, for us, we think a lot of what goes on in these groups online, like within fat community specifically, because that's what we're a little dialed into, fat and trans community. People just want their stories to be heard. Sometimes they want to be able to tell other people, I went in and the doctor did this and this and this. And then he told me, like someone told me recently, an acquaintance of mine said, I just got home from the doctor and I was telling them that I think I might have some Crohn's symptoms. I've got these reoccurring mouth sores and all these gastrointestinal problems. And the doctor told me, you can't have Crohn's because only thin people get Crohn's. And it's
wow.
It's just like things like that are happening to people every day. And what I'd really like to do is kind of just collect up everyone's stories about this, because to some extent, I think that these stories about discrimination in a healthcare setting, I think that people really relate to these stories and are really moved by them. That's one thing I've really noticed. Like when I explained to my thin friends why I was starting Ample, I would oftentimes say a story like what I just told everyone, and they would be shocked and, oh my God, that's so wrong. They would have that reaction, because I think it really just, when it's life or death like that, I think people really begin to understand what weight discrimination can mean. And so I think that I would really like to create something where we collect up all of those stories and present them in a really visually cool way, and just kind of almost be like a trove of these stories so that people can start to understand the scope of the problem. Because there's so many great, an article will pop up and it will chronicle someone's experience at the doctor, even just being a woman, right? Even just being a woman at the doctor is dangerous at times. And I would like to kind of be a trove of those stories presented in a visually interesting way so that we can really begin to wrap our mind around the scope of the problem. So that's one little project.
I think that's an amazing idea because it's like you said, people are shocked when they hear your story. And I think that the tendency is also to be like, but that's just a very um, individual specific incident and it's not happening to most people. And
Yes.
that, all of my clients, most of my clients are in larger bodies and they've all had these traumatizing experiences with doctors that have actually made their lives worse. I had one client who said, I loved yoga. I did it all the time. She went to the doctor who said, that's not enough. You'll never lose weight doing that. And it ruined yoga for her and she stopped exercising altogether.
Totally.
And it's like, how would a doctor think that that was a good idea to say this exercise that you love is terrible and because you're never going to have a thin body with it? So there are multiple stories out there. And I think that if people could see them all together, it would say like, hey, these aren't individual isolated incidences. This is a huge problem. And I can't wait to see that project come to fruition.
Thanks. I'm glad you like the idea. I also love it. It's been a part of my idea of what Ample would be for a long time. I think I viewed it as like a horror story section, but now I'm almost visualizing it as its own little project. Because another thing that's really obviously of huge concern is, and I'm sure you guys know about these statistics, is the amount of discrimination Black women face, especially during pregnancy, and our rates of, our postpartum rates of death and mortality are just so
Yes.
high. It's
Mhm.
shocking. And so I think that there's a way to even be able to let, lots of different marginalized bodies tell their stories and kind of collect it together as like look, we've got a problem in modern healthcare, and it's serious. It's an epidemic, and I certainly don't want to cast all healthcare providers in that light, because there are some amazing ones out there. And here in Portland, I have an amazing healthcare provider who's been a huge salvation for me. But I think, yeah, I would love to collect it all together and talk about what different identities face when going to the doctor.
Well, I think what resonates for me there is just the idea of being heard, and
Yes.
giving, allowing people who have experienced trauma be able to feel heard. And I think that's a big part of people's healing.
Yeah, I think so. There's something so cathartic about being able to tell the world your story, something that happened to you. And I would really like to build that for people, I guess. It's just part of the feedback that I've gotten, even within building Ample. And sometimes when we wonder, oh gosh, why doesn't that person, go and make a review about that place? Well, because maybe sharing their story wasn't really
Yeah.
about that. Maybe sharing their story to this group was actually just because they needed to be heard and they needed someone to say, that was fucked up. That shouldn't have happened. And if you feel that you can muster the strength, you should say X, Y, and Z back to them, and we have your back, kind of a thing.
Yeah, exactly. You mentioned a little bit about what we can do as businesses to sort of get out there a little bit. It's interesting. Like, I think if we were to sort of think about our listeners, I think we probably, anecdotally, I think we have a lot of providers that are listening and a lot of just lay people in the community listening, right? So, when you think about who you would like to reach out to most, do you sort of see that as a business sort of trying to get their site on there and making sure it's on there, or do you think the other push is really towards like the consumer and the user?
Yeah, good question. I love the idea that the businesses would kind of come on board in this strong sense, because
Mm-hmm.
then we could head the problem off at the pass. If
Mm-hmm.
businesses were more mindful of the types of seating they chose, especially, of
Yeah.
course, restaurants. One of the biggest things when we talk about restaurants is how easy it is for a restaurant to overlook the fact that they have all arms with chairs, or chairs with arms at
Yeah.
their restaurant. It's like, that
Yes.
doesn't make sense. Yeah, they have all chairs with arms in their restaurants, and they have nowhere for a larger bodied person to sit comfortably. I'm thinking of one restaurant is coming to mind when I think of Portland, and I've made a review on Ample about it, and I've actually emailed them about it too. But how I just basically can't go to that place. And it's actually good for their business if they had more diverse seating, because then I would go to their restaurant because I love it. So I think that if we could reach out and raise awareness amongst businesses and have businesses take this pledge, and that would be absolutely great. I love the idea that we could kind of use this as an awareness raising tool instead of a business bashing tool, because I've owned a business in the past, and it can be hard. It can be hard to receive a lot of criticism about what you're doing when you feel like you're barely swimming. But I think that if we could use this in a gentle way to say, hey, this is a problem, and hey, here's an easy solution. Just get a few chairs that don't have arms and talk a little bit with your servers. Like, if a person in a larger body comes, it's okay to ask them, hey, is this seat comfortable for you, or can I get you something else? I think there's so much stigma around it, as we all know, that sometimes people in thin bodies don't feel like they can ask that maybe to people. And so some of it is getting new physical objects in your space, and some of it is just being able to have a conversation with people that work for you in a way that feels good for everyone, and let them know tools that they can kind of use to help people have a better time at their facility. It's one thing.
Awesome. No, I think so there's our call out, right? If you have a business, or if you are a provider, go and claim your site and take the pledge and make sure it's on this site for people to find. And I think the more critical mass we can get involved on this, the more it will grow just by word of mouth.
I agree. It's not going anywhere. It's going to be around for a long time. It doesn't cost that much to pay the cloud servers to serve up Ample. So it'll be around for a long time, and I think we can just continue growing it. We're worldwide. There's at least 10 countries where there are reviews, and there's all over the United States there are reviews for places, but I think that with this type of a thing, we just need more and more and more.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Alissa, we are so grateful to you and your team for providing this, doing all of this hard work to provide this service, and committing to growing it. And we just want to thank you for doing that. And also thank you for being on the podcast today and telling us about it.
Oh yeah, it was my pleasure. I'm happy to do it, and it's been a great learning experience for me. And I'm so happy to talk with you guys about this.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Alissa. Well, that was an amazing interview with Alissa. So thanks so much again for coming on our podcast. That wraps up this episode. You want to stay tuned. We got episode 51 coming your way very shortly. We are going to be talking about orthorexia.
Yes, and pretty excited to have that conversation. And as always, please go and leave us a rating on iTunes. That really helps get the word out about our podcast. And we do really want to spread the word because we really believe in what we're doing. And we want the, anti-diet paradigm to have a chance in this world. So yeah, give us a review. Thanks.
That's the URL. It is ample.com.
Is it Ample? Yeah.
Is it Ample?
Oh my God, I totally blew that.
No problem.
We're
Sorry about that.
up all over the place this morning.
We can keep that, Toby.
Yeah.
Okay.